Yeah, the topic we have here is why use hollow blocks instead of bricks in wall construction. Because all over what is oftentimes used is hollow blocks. So even down to foundation, you still see some people making use of bricks, but you still get to see some people making use of hollow blocks to raise the foundation to DPC level. Then from the DPC level, even continuing the superstructure, they still tend to make use of the hollow blocks. So why do we use hollow blocks instead of bricks in construction? So what is the importance of hollow blocks to bricks in construction? So we'll look at the definition of what hollow blocks is, so that we will have a wide knowledge of the hollow blocks that is being used, and why we tend to make use of hollow block. Hollow blocks are concrete masonry units, with hollow core that are lighter, stronger, and more efficient than traditional bricks. They are lighter. You can see that they are normally lighter, and they are more efficient than the traditional bricks. They improve construction speed because of the size. So they actually improve construction, because for you to use a brick, maybe bricks on a partition, wall partition, one particular partition. If you are comparing using your bricks and your hollow blocks, you see that you even complete the hollow blocks like twice before you even think of completing the same area with bricks. So they improve construction speed, then reduce material usage, and enhance thermal and sound insulation. Yes, because of the hollowness of the blocks, so it tends to reduce thermal and sound insulation. So we'll take a look at the key reasons why hollow blocks are used instead of bricks. So what are those reasons? Because oftentimes you see why people make use of hollow blocks, so we don't really know the reasons why they tend to make use of hollow blocks. So we are going to look at some of those reasons. So the first one we have is lightweight. So hollow blocks are very light. You can see they are lighter than bricks, making handling, transportation, and construction easier and faster. So because of the not the size now, but the lightness of the hollow blocks, so they actually make the handling. So the handling part is when you are constructing and you are making use of the hollow blocks. So it makes the handling, very very easy. Then transportation of hollow blocks is also easy because of the weight. So you don't have your cars breaking down, your trucks breaking down on the road because of the lightweightness of the hollow block. Then the construction easier, so it makes the construction easier, you understand, because of the handling. So you easily take the hollow block, you place it, add your mortar and so on and so forth. Then it also makes the construction procedure faster. So this is very very important. Then the second point is faster construction. So larger size and uniform shape, reduce laying time and increase productivity. Yes, so it's actually reduce the time of laying the blocks because of the size. It is larger. So I think one hollow block is almost more than the brick size, times maybe times 6 to times 7 to times 10, you understand. So depending, so it's actually help to reduce the laying time, then and increase productivity. So instead of just being on one side of the wall for like 5 days laying bricks, you can just do your hollow blocks, lay your hollow blocks within that specific time frame, and you get away with it. Then the next point is better thermal insulation. So hollow core reduces heat transfer, keeping interior cooler and improving energy efficiency. So you can see that hollow block tends to help to reduce heat transfer. So because as the heat tends to hit it from outside, it has that hollowness in between it before the next wall, so tends to help to reduce, that heat transfer, then keeps the interior cooler. Yeah, because of that hollowness too, it helps to keep, the interior of the block cooler. That means the inner part of the block cooler, and improves energy efficiency. So the next point is sound insulation. Yes, hollow structure helps reduce noise transmission for quieter and more comfortable spaces. So making use of your hollow blocks help to, reduce noise, helps to cancel noise. That is where noise cancellation comes in. Helps to reduce to the minimum, reduce noise, then for quieter and more comfortable space. So if you make use of hollow block, you see that your house tends to be quieter. Things that are happening outside, you don't really get to, hear it, because of the nature of the block, that is the construction material you used. So the next one is cost effective. We said uses less mortar and plaster, reduces labor cost and overall construction time. Let us look at less mortar, because it is very very important. Construction, you tend to place your mortar, then you place your hollow block, place another mortar. Still the same process as if you are making use of your bricks, but you can see that due to the size of the hollow block, it tends to help reduce the mortar that you tend to use. Because if you are comparing the mortar usage for the bricks installation and the hollow block laying, you see that that of hollow block is more economical. So it helps to actually reduce the mortar and plaster, and it helps to reduce labor costs. Labor cost is also very very significant in this review, because you can see that if you're laying your bricks, you understand, you can lay just maybe half of the wall in 2 days. You understand? And you're going to pay the same person. You pay for the first day, you pay for the second day, but your hollow block will cover the whole area, with less time, less cost, and everything will just go seamlessly, and overall construction expenses. So hollow block tends to actually reduce overall construction expenses. You still gain the same strength, you still gain, the same alignment that you need for your wall construction. Then we'll look at the uses, right? So where do we use hollow blocks? So residential buildings and housing projects. So hollow blocks are used in residential buildings and housing projects. Then boundary and compound wall. So hollow blocks are also used on your boundary, your partition wall, your compound wall. You tend to use your hollow block. Then load bearing and non-load bearing wall. So for your load bearing wall, you tend to make use of your hollow block. Then for your non-load bearing wall, you still tend to make use of your hollow block. Commercial and industrial buildings, you still tend to make use of your hollow block. Even commercial buildings, you understand, you make use of your hollow blocks. Schools, hospitals, and public structures. So all public structures, your hospital, your schools, your offices, you tend to make use of hollow blocks. Then for your retaining wall structure, landscaping walls, you tend to make use of your hollow blocks. Then we have partition and interior wall construction. So for your partition wall, that means trying to segment a particular wall from another wall, or your partition wall. All these you tend to make use of your hollow block. Then your interior wall, you tend to make use of your hollow block. So we have a typical hollow block structure here. So you can see vertical reinforcement that is protruding. Sometimes you do your block, lay your blocks before you do your column lapping, or you just lap, then you use that edge of the column reinforcement to just continue your wall. Then we have a grouted core, that is a concrete fill. So you tend to fill the partition between the two blocks, hollow blocks, with your concrete fill. Then hollow concrete blocks. You can see where the hollow concrete block is, that is lightweight and durable. Then we have mortar joints, strong bonds, then plaster and render, smooth finish. We have damp-proof cores. You can see your DPC there. There is a moisture protection. And we have our foundation, the main foundation where the damp-proof core is, which is structural support. Then we have concrete footing, which is load distribution. Then we have a compacted soil, which is the stable base where the whole construction is done. So hollow block is very important in construction. It is very hard, holds a much significance in construction because it helps to economize the whole construction process, whereby you're giving quality and you're still at the same time not spending as much as it should be.